I'm Angela Fairhurst, founder of Jerry Gadgets, a revolutionary solution for dementia care. Inspired by my personal journey caring for my mother with dementia, I developed patented sensory tools that engage loved ones, reduce anxiety, and create joyful moments without medication, providing much-needed relief for caregivers. Jerry Gadgets currently come in 3 silicone buckets with activities like flower arranging, shape sorting, and tactile fidgets, with more in development. Each Jerry Gadget is designed to stimulate the senses, fostering connection and communication, even at advanced stages of cognitive decline. Non-toxic, built to last, and dishwasher safe, Jerry Gadgets transform caregiving by promoting engagement, improving quality of life, and offering caregivers a respite from constant supervision. Discover how our innovative products can bring joy and meaningful interaction to your loved ones with dementia while easing the caregiver's burden. Visit jerrygadgets.com to learn more and start making every moment count.
For a limited time, you can get 20% off your next order of Jerry Gadgets by going to www.ssww.com Jerry Gadgets for Dementia and enter the special Love Conquers Alz coupon code LCA20. Get 20% off Jerry Gadgets today.
I'm Peter, owner of Priess and I Photography, and I want to talk to you about something important: preserving memories. Time moves quickly, and before we know it, those we love may no longer be with us. For the last few years, I've taken complimentary professional headshots of seniors in a local retirement home, helping families capture the essence and personality of their loved ones through beautiful photos. I've seen firsthand how meaningful these images can be. When I photographed my own parents, I realized how powerful it is to have these lasting memories, photos that capture smiles, stories, and the unique spirit of the people we care about most. If your parents or loved ones are still with you, don't wait. These images can bring comfort and joy for years to come, whether it's for remembering silly moments or honoring family history. My message is simple: get photos of your loved ones while you can. Hire a local photographer, use your camera, cell phone, whatever it takes. Just do it now. For more information, visit peterisfanphotography.com.
When the world has got you down and
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal: love. This is Love Conquers Alz, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priess.
Hi everybody, I am Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priess, and this is Love Conquers Alz. Hello, Susan.
Hi Don, how you doing? I got casual there. I said Don,
yeah, you did.
not Donald.
Normally it's Donald.
Yeah.
It's Don. I wasn't even sure if you were talking to me.
I'm lightening the mood. I'm lightening the
Thank
mood
you.
today.
I appreciate
before
that.
Before we do a deep dive into where we're going
Yes.
today. Yeah. So, speaking of that, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us with Love Conquers Alz. We really appreciate you coming back and being loyal listeners, and we hope that we're bringing value to your life. And I think today will be particularly valuable in terms of kind of a different subject that we're kind of skewing a little bit to go along with our where our head's at right now, which is in our documentary No Country for Old People, right? And because of that, we have a very special co-host guest with us, a guest co-host, which is none other than Rick Mountcastle.
I was wondering who that extra guy was up here.
Yeah, that's Rick Mountcastle.
Hi, Susie. Hi, Don. Thank you for having me.
Hi,
Hello, Rick.
Of course. So, in case you don't know, Rick is not only is he the co-producer along with Don and I on the documentary No Country for Old People. Rick, I'm going to give you his very prestigious background. Is a former retired U.S. attorney, an award-winning federal and state prosecutor who prosecuted one of many cases, but you might have heard of the Purdue Pharma case, where he prosecuted them for fraudulently marketing OxyContin, and that story in particular was featured in a miniseries on Hulu called Dope Sick. And Rick was portrayed by Peter Sarsgaard, who's really he's really finding his starlight right now. He's in everything, right?
Yeah,
we've seen him
like we were just watching Presumed Innocent, and there he is playing another
prosecutor.
Another prosecutor. Yeah,
another prosecutor.
Yeah, so
I think he's found his niche.
Well, I think that his career took off once he portrayed me in the Hulu miniseries.
Absolutely.
Who could read it any other way, Rick?
Of course.
Who could read it any other way?
Yeah.
He
right?
wasn't as nice. He wasn't as nice in Presumed Innocent as he was. You know, I didn't like him as much as when he played.
He was smarmy. So. Yeah, he was icky. But side note, Presumed Innocent, very, very intriguing. We liked it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so back to our show. The way that Rick and I met, in case you also don't know that story, and I'll try to be brief, but it's really kind of interesting, and it's what Rick always says, there are no coincidences. And I was watching Dope Sick, and in the final episode, the actor who was playing his partner came in and announced their next case, which was also a pharmaceutical case, which was against Abbott Labs, who produced Depakote, and they off-marketed that drug, which is a black label drug, to nursing homes. And my mom was a victim of Depakote, and I didn't know what it was until her doctor told me. I thought her Alzheimer's was progressing, and that was 8 years before she died. And she went from this, very physically healthy person to a zombie. And so I reached out to Rick on LinkedIn and said, would you come on our show? And he did. And that was during the time that my mom and I were going through such horrible, that whole journey with the nursing home, and that Rick was the very first person to tell me that it wasn't just my mom's issue and my issue in this particular nursing home. It was really a systemic crisis. So from there, Rick was it's a long story, I won't go all into it, but Rick was actually retiring that year, which was 2022, and when we decided to do the documentary, he was all in, because he had also prosecuted nursing homes for over 2 decades and really didn't see any significant change, and he, as he says, is sick of it. Right, Rick?
Right, I am. I'm sick of the same old thing going on over and over again for year after year after year, and it's time for a change.
Right. So, of course, we were, beyond ecstatic, because, what Rick brings to this documentary is invaluable, and his experience on the political side and all of the underbelly of what we see as consumers. He had that experience being boots on the ground and dealing with families, and basically saying that my hands are tied. Like, this kind of care is now the standard. And so, we're coming from it with all different kinds of perspectives. And what we're finding as we're doing this documentary is that the stories they're endless, and they're really important. So obviously we can't put them all in the documentary, or we'd have like years and years worth of material. But and we decided that that it would be really powerful to share with you guys other people's stories, and so that you can understand the breadth of this issue, and that it isn't just an elderly person's issue, or it isn't just, a diversity issue, or some, people, in rural areas. These nursing home issues are not outliers. These are the standard, and the good nursing homes and long-term care facilities those are the outliers.
And
so,
Susie, it's not just a nursing home issue. It's acute care hospitals, which is what we're going to look at today, rehab facilities, it's basically anything that is in a position, any kind of facility that is responsible for taking care of people, not just elders, but disabled folks and people that are recovering from surgery. They're responsible for taking care of them in these facilities. And what we're seeing is that they are basically abusing and neglecting the patients. And so the breadth of this is actually is beyond what we had imagined when we first started the project, I would say.
I think so. And you know, we tried, you know, because of that, the massive breadth of this issue, we stayed primarily on nursing homes in the documentary, and that's why we want to bring more stories that you know, actually talk about what Rick just said. So our last episode we did that, and we're doing it again this episode with another person, and we just think it's going to be so valuable for you all to listen to these stories so that it doesn't happen to you, so that you can be prepared and understand what you're up against and why this documentary is so damn important. So without further ado, Dawn.
Well, today our guest is Aaron Adams. Aaron is a heavy machine operator for the local 649 International Union of Operating Engineers and lives in Peoria, Illinois. His father, Thomas Adams, was a robust 75-year-old who was a beloved brother, father, uncle, nephew, cousin, and friend. But after treatment for heart issues, Aaron's father was sent to an acute rehab hospital. And this is where the story of Thomas Adams took an unexpected and dark turn. Today we have his son Aaron with us to share their harrowing journey. So let's say hello to Aaron Adams. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it, and appreciate you sharing your story with us, because I know how hard it is, and sometimes it's cathartic, but then also it's really difficult to relive it. So, Thank you. Do you want to just give us a little recap of how we got to this conversation today, and then we'll dive in and get into the nitty-gritty?
Okay. Well, I guess it kind of started with my father and his health issues. I didn't really take it serious because, you know, Dad, you just think that he's going to make it through anything, kind of like you think Mom, she'll just make it through anything. And he had a stent put in, and the stent was bad. It got infected. Once that stent got infected, he went to the hospital, and they replaced it initially, but they didn't take the infection out. So the second stent became infected. And the hospital who had replaced it chose not to deal with it because it had been like 3 months when he just had the open heart surgery previously. So they sent him up to Chicago. I'm in the Chicago area. So they sent him up to Chicago, and the hospital handled it, Loyola. They handled the situation, but they didn't get all the infection out. It traveled down to his leg. He had come home, and he was home probably 3 days, if I'm not mistaken. But he just kept explaining, expressing so much pain. And hearing, I'm in pain. And I'm thinking to myself, Dad, you can't be in that much pain. You get up and you drive, 3 hours to go get watermelons. You load up the back of your truck, you bring them back here, and then you sit out and you give them away and you sell them. You can't be in that much pain. And he said he was. So Loyola ended up sending him to Kindred, North Lake Hospital for rehabilitation. They went back into the leg, got the infection out, sewed him back up and said, okay, we're going to get you back walking again, get you back home. So while he was there, his health just kind of declined, and it seemed really weird because he would call me every day and he'd say, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. He'd give me different details about what was going on with his care. It was a bit challenging for me to get up there because Chicago's approximately 3 hours away from where I'm at now. And then I worked an hour and a half south from where I'm at now. So that was about 4.5 hours to get to him, get back and forth to work. And I'm his only child. So that was a challenge as well. But slowly but surely, he would stop calling, and I'm wondering, like, how come he's not checking in? Usually he calls and checks in. And there was one time that I called and they said, Aaron, I'm weak. I'm weak. I'm so weak I can't hold my phone up. And I'm thinking to myself, that's impossible, Dad. You're there for rehabilitation. You know, how can you not hold your phone up? I couldn't fathom that idea. I mean, I thought he was just trying to get out. I thought he was just trying to hurry up and get home because he wanted to be at home and eat normal food and play with Shadow, you know, because he loves Shadow. I mean, he loved this dog. But he was actually losing his strength for whatever reason, whether it was because all of the infection wasn't out or, you know, the treatment of the facility. The worst part of the situation was it was something that needed to be done, and the caretakers, they weren't doing what they were supposed to, you know. And I think this topic is a little broader than actually what we initially came for, because as I sat and thought about it, you know, with him not being able to hold up his phone, that should be an issue. If I come to get my leg, you know, to get rehab on my leg, and you overhear me telling my son I can't hold my phone up, you know, as the taker, as the caretaker, that should be an issue of concern. At least for me, it would be, you know. Mm-hmm. But as time grew on, he stopped calling totally. And so I placed a call and, you know, asked like, hey, where's he at? What's going on? And he would tell me things like, you know, they're hiding my phone, or they're not letting me call. Yeah, it was some things there that were very, very concerning. And as time progressed on, I went up to speak with the doctor, and I said, hey, can I get my dad to come home? We have a kindred hospital in my area. You know, can I get him to come here? And the doctor was gung-ho for it. Yeah, we can do that. We can do it. And I'm like, okay, great. We'll make arrangements. I'll talk to the hospital here. You can talk to the people you need to talk to. We'll make arrangements. We'll get him home. The next day, he went unresponsive and flatlined. Right after I had that conversation with the doctor. That was on a Friday. On a Saturday, he flatlined. No one notified me. No one called me. Sunday, which was the next day after that he flatlined, I had a text from my uncle and said, hey, your dad is unresponsive. You need to get to the hospital. And so I'm thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. How is he unresponsive? You know, I get to the hospital, and when I get there, I speak with the doctor, and he says, well, he was unresponsive yesterday for 8 minutes, but we resuscitated him. But we don't know if there's any brain damage. We don't know. So we'll do the EEG and all the different tests they wanted to run. So I said, okay. I asked, well, do you know what happened? Can you explain what happened? The explanation I was given was like when an old car goes bad, you know, everything starts breaking down. When the carburetor goes bad, you know.
God, I heard that too.
Yeah.
I heard the same thing, Aaron.
That's crazy, isn't it?
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I heard the same thing.
No worries.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was a little perturbed. Well, more than a little. I was upset. I mean, I'm not even going to lie to you. I was upset, and I looked at him, and I'm like, are you serious? Are you really going to give me the analogy of a car, and my father's laying here like a vegetable? You know, so that kind of started the fire within me, you know, and disdain within me for this situation, what we're talking about, to kind of just progressively move forward. I had asked the doctor, I said, you know, once we find out what his brain activity is, you know, what the level of brain activity is, I still want to get him home, you know, because if he's going to be a vegetable, he might as well be a vegetable at my house instead of being a vegetable in your hospital, you know. Right. And so I was told I couldn't afford to get him home. No transport service would do it. I mean, everything in the world, why they didn't want to release my father to me.
Who told you that? The case manager or the
doctor?
The doctor?
The head physician told me that. Yeah, yeah. He explained to me that I couldn't afford it, which was funny because he doesn't know what I do for a living. He doesn't know, you know, I don't have kids. I own several properties. I own all my vehicles. You know, I make a great living. When I say great living, I'm good. You know what I mean? So
you're good.
He doesn't know that I'm good. You know.
Okay.
But
you're good.
He was stereotyping.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah, they're stereotyping you. But can I ask you a question? Was your dad? He was 75, which in today's world is not an old. You know, is
right.
not a
feeble
old person. And so was he on, clearly he was on Medicare, but was he on Medicaid at that point too for the long-term care, or?
I think so, because when I talked to his caseworker person, she said that he had both. They had transferred him to both Medicare and Medicaid, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That makes sense,
So,
right?
and I think, and I hate to say he was stereotyping me. I don't want to just say that, but I think because my father being so far away, me having limited access to him, and him being on Medicaid and Medicare, he made a safe assumption. Let's say he made a safe assumption that we weren't able to, fund getting him home. And so I took it as that. At first I took it like, oh, I kind of gave him the look like, dude, but then I said, you know what, maybe because of this circumstance, he's making this assumption, and not because of anything else.
Yeah, Rick, I had a question. Would a doctor normally be making that assumption or those decisions, or wouldn't that be a caseworker or someone from the
usually
administration?
The case manager.
He was probably the medical director, and oftentimes the doctors don't like to do that. They probably should. They should be talking to families more, but a lot of times they don't. They like to send a social worker or a caseworker case manager out. But I think it's, you'd want to talk to the doctor that was treating our loved ones, right? That's the person you want to have that face-to-face conversation with. So I don't know.
Right, but as far as like determining transportation and costs and all that stuff, that doesn't seem to be his position.
That seems out of his purview. Yeah, that should be like.
Well, nobody knows. Yeah. Nobody knows for sure. They should not be making that assumption, right? That should be up to the family to decide what's within their means to do. But I think that was like I think as Aaron starts talking a little bit more, we'll find that they didn't want something to be discovered. Okay, they were hiding something, and the doctor, being part of that group, didn't want necessarily. I mean, he's getting paid by that rehab facility.
Gotcha.
He might have even a position there of some sort of authority. And there's something there, I think it'll become clearer as Aaron talks that maybe they were hiding something.
What I think he was attempting, and by no means am I attempting to take the side of the doctor, but I think he was attempting to deter me from trying to get my dad home, as Rick was explaining. So I think him making the statement about finance, that might have scared me, I guess he was thinking, which it didn't, but in his mind, he was thinking that possibly might deter him from continuing to try to push the issue about getting him back to Peoria. He also stated that, no transportation company would do it. He said, it's a 3-hour trip. Your dad is on the ventilator. We can't transport him with the ventilator. He gave me every reason in the world, every one that he could possibly come up with.
Oh my gosh.
That was the initial. And so I got really upset. I got upset to the point where I told him, I don't want you to say anything else to me. You go that way, I'll go this way. We're not going to talk anymore. From here on out, it's going to be somebody else who communicates with me because, we're just not going to do this. And he was upset after that. I left. Let me go back a little bit. I honestly was going to pull the plug that day when I saw my dad. That Sunday, I was going to pull the plug. But I had a friend go up with me, and she's a nurse. And so I was like, you know what? I probably need somebody who knows about what's going on because I don't know anything, and they could probably tell me anything. I need someone who knows the terminology, who understands. So I called her. I said, hey, you want to go to Chicago with me? Dad's in the hospital. They say he flatlined yesterday, and now he's, unresponsive. And she's like, yes. So we drove. We got up there, and so she looked at me, and she says, Aaron, don't do that yet. And I'm like, I can't watch him. I can't see him like this. I just got to do this. And she's like, no, don't do that yet. And so I'm like, okay. I called my mom, and my mom said, Aaron, give it a week. Just wait. So I said, okay. I waited that week, and they still hadn't got the EEG report. And I'm like, how do you not know what his brain activity is after a week? You told me it'd be 2 days. Now it's a week later. We still don't know. So I said, okay. Next thing I know, I go up with my FLMA because it's causing problems at my job. He has like 8 doctors. and all of them are calling me every day, to ask, can they do something else? Can we turn the trach tube? Can we add more of this, whatever the stuff was they were using to keep his heart rate up? Because his blood pressure or whatever, they need to keep the veins constricted. So they would call the kidney doctor, the nutrition doctor. And I'm at work and I'm getting these calls, and my supervisor's like, hey, Aaron, what's going on? And I'm like, man, Dad's in the hospital, he's dying. And he's like, well, the company we're working for, they don't want you on your phone. And I mean, 3, 4, 5 times a day, I got a different doctor. Every time they go in to see him, that doctor would give me a call, so it's jeopardizing my job. So I take the FLMA paperwork up there, and he tells me he's not signing it unless I do a DNR or pull the plug. So he gives me the option to do one of the two. And at that point,
whoa.
I don't know what an FLMA is.
That's a Family Medical Leave Act, which is it's a law that says certain employers have to allow employees time off of work to take care of a family emergency, like a medical emergency like that. But Aaron's talking about needing to have the doctor needs to sign it so the employer to verify it with the employer.
But you have to have a do not resuscitate or that they're making you do that. That's insane.
Tried to make me. He tried to make me. And I looked at him and I told him, dude, you're going to sign, because he told me he wouldn't sign it. And I'm like, dude, you're going to sign this paper and I'm not going to do anything. I'm not doing anything, but you're going to sign the paper. I mean, he was upset with me. I was upset with him. And I think he kind of felt like, well, I got this 6-foot black guy, 235 pounds, sitting here telling me I'm going to sign the paper, even though I don't really want to. I think I'm going to, And so at that time, he might have, kind of stereotype me like,
Okay, I'd rather have your stereotype than mine, because this is what they did with me. This is what they went with me. That dumb blonde in the other room. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Bye. Yeah. Nobody was intimidated by me.
Oh goodness. I'm so sorry. I should have been there for you.
You should have been, Aaron. Where were you?
But he signed the paper. He fussed his way out, told me it was stupid, whatever. But he did sign it. I didn't, do that. I didn't do the DNR, but the nurse told me that they thought that I was going to do the DNR that day. And I told him I'm not doing it until my dad gets home. I'll do the do not resuscitate once he's in my care.
So smart. So smart. Mm-hmm.
And so I left the hospital, of course, upset. The doctor walked off. And so I began to call companies, every transportation company I could think of, and found one. They said, yes, we can do it. With the vet tube, we can do it. We can get him back. We can get him to the Kindred. We'll pull the vet tube from the Kindred hospital. And then if he survives, you can get him home. Perfect. I just want him back in Peoria. That's all I want. A couple of days later, they would call me back and say, hey, we talked to that doctor. He said, no, we shouldn't do it because this, and this. And I'm like, are you serious? They're like, yes. I'm like, okay. Next week comes by, I find another company to do it. They say yes. A couple of days later, they tell me why they can't, because the doctors told them something else. So I called up there and I told them, I said, hey, listen, I don't want you to speak to any more of the transportation companies if you're going to tell them they can when they've told me they can. It's some reason you're trying to stop me from getting my dad. I don't know why. I have no idea what you're doing, but you're trying to impede on every opportunity that I'm having to get my father home. I just want my dad home, dude. That's what I want. I don't want him dying here. I want him home. And so he's, of course, he tried to give me the spiel of why and this medical issue, that medical issue. It was just a whole lot. There were some other things that I wish I could say what they were doing. But unbeknownst to me, I don't know about the medical field. So while they were calling me, asking me for my permission to do certain stuff, they weren't documenting the calls. So because I wouldn't do the DNR, they wanted to contact the ethics committee to revoke my power of attorney rights, so they would be able to have power of attorney to do the DNR and whatever happened after that. I mean, it was some weird stuff going on, and how, they're able to manipulate the system that they've set up against you. And when you don't know, you don't know. So, that was one of the things. His medications continue to increase. And I'm like, why are the medications increasing? If he's a vegetable, why are we increasing medication? But if you're saying it's going to help the situation, not only that, but if your medication is so high, we can't transport you because you have too much of this medication in you or too much of that medication in you. So you can't be moved. You understand? I didn't know this at the time, but they knew. So if we can say, hey, Aaron, can we, give him, we need to give him more, whatever, of this. Oh, yeah, go ahead, as long as it's going to help, and you come to find out it wasn't really to help. It was really to, make the situation work in their favor. Long story short, third weekend, I found another company. They say yes. A couple days later, they tell me why they can't do it. So I kept talking to everybody, though. I'm just meeting new people, talking to new people. And finally, I met this young lady. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, was your mother part of the caregiving? Well, because she lived closer, right, to where your dad was at?
So my mother was in Arizona visiting grandkids. So she was out there with all the my mom's a snowbird, in the wintertime she goes to Arizona. Summertime she comes back to Illinois. So she's in Arizona, and I'm kind of keeping her updated on what's going on, but I don't want to really stress her with it because, she's about all I got left. So I don't want to, her to, have a heart attack and die on me. And, I'm just I'm trying to handle it,
Mm-hmm.
And
you were handling too much, my friend. You were handling a lot.
Yeah.
I know, because I was the only one handling my mom. I was the only one, so I know.
Yeah. So I spoke to a young lady, and she initially said she would be able to, but then she explained to me that she wouldn't. But she referred me to a company that specialized in transporting individuals like my dad, who would be on hospice, with the vent tube, with all the machines hooked up, just like that. So I'm like, yes, I'm getting him home. So I'm calling the family, hey, I'm getting him home, he's coming home, whatever. So I contact the company. They're like, yeah, we can do it, Aaron. We want to lay eyes on him first. So I said, okay, perfect. So they go up, they lay eyes on him, they see the condition. They call me and say, we can do this. But the hospital wants this DNR before he leaves. Will you sign the DNR for them? I said, I will not sign the DNR for them. I know what happens, at that point in time. Usually at that time, the health totally declines and he'll probably be dead. I will not sign it for them. I'll sign it once he gets home. That's the agreement I'll make with you guys. If not, then you guys just going to have to keep him as a vegetable and we're going to figure something else out. But I refused. So she said, okay.
I was the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they went and saw him. They did some investigating. They saw some things didn't add up. Didn't add up between what the doctor was saying, what the file was saying. Things didn't add up. So they called me and said, hey, Aaron, things aren't adding up. I explained to them everything I had been throughout the whole situation. And they're just like, we're sorry about that. We'll get your dad home. So the day of them supposed to be bringing him home, they talked to the doctor. Doctor gives them something. They call me and say, Aaron, look, we can't do it. And I'm like, hold on, wait. I understand that when my dad arrives here, he'll probably be dead within 5 minutes. I understand that. I've accepted that fact. But I want him to do it here. That's all I'm asking from you guys. I just want him here. I don't want him anywhere else. Yeah. I want him to die here.
Right.
I can't get his auntie up there. My grandmother's only living sister. I can't get her to Chicago. I can't get the whole family there to see him before he passes. I'm accepting that fact. I just want him here.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. I feel you. Take your time. It's okay.
So she said, okay, if you will agree to doing the DNR once he gets there, we will bring him home to you, Aaron. I said, thank you. She sent me the paperwork. I signed the paperwork. They got on their way. They started coming. They put him in the ambulance, got him home. So we got a chance to spend time with him. We hung out with him. All the family was here. And we spent time for probably about 30 minutes with the vent tube. They gave us that, which I was very grateful for, because they really were supposed to take it out 5 minutes after he arrived, but they gave us time. Mm-hmm. And when they pulled the vent tube, he lived about an hour. I mean, not much, but that was enough. He breathed on his own. We got to talk to him. Everybody got to see him. And I kissed him. And I said, Dad, it's your choice, because he was breathing really good. Like I thought he was going to come through. Like, he started pumping real heavy.
Yeah.
And I said, it's your choice, whatever you want to do. I'm here. It's whatever you want to do. So then, of course, he took his last breath, and the family started to exit out. And that's when I was notified there were some things that I needed to see from the transportation team. I had already had plans on taking some pictures, because some of the physical conditions that I had already saw. There was a scar on a sore on his mouth, a huge scab on his ear. So I wanted to see what the rest of his body looked like. I'm very inquisitive, and when you tell me no, I'm thinking of ways, how can I get this done? So, and why are you telling me no? What is the reason you're saying no? So the nurses rolled his body, and that's when I seen some of the most horrific sights I'd ever seen in my life. The size of my hand, like I said, I'm 6 foot, about 230 pounds, and my hand is not really humongous, but I can palm a basketball, and there were bed sores on his body the size of my hand, both my hands round, but in height or in width, that was like how it was, the size of a dinner plate. And I'm like, oh, okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. This is why I couldn't afford to get him home.
That's right.
This is why,
Right.
all of the different things that were brought to me, and why the attempts to stop me from getting him home. And so they began to explain to me what the bed sores were, and I'm grateful for those nurses. They were so wonderful. I mean, they were just the sweetest ladies in the world. But they explained to me, how that happens, under what conditions those things happen. And
I'm just going to interject and say for our audience that, and I'd say it all the time, but it is the hallmark of neglect. Bed sores. They're not, they are avoidable. And our experts said that on our documentary. They are avoidable. And they are one of 5 things that are the hallmark of neglect, and that is on their to-do list, is to make sure that it doesn't happen. And if they begin, there's always to avoid it, to get to that level that your dad had. That's me, Susie, saying that, not you.
But CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid,
CMS will tell you,
says they
they're
are
called
never
never events.
events. They should never happen in any kind
Never.
of care situation.
right.
And if
right.
they do, they can be treated if they're caught. When they see these, they deal with this person. If they see it starting, it can be treated, it can be avoided, but
It
if
has
not,
to be.
it is
should
neglect.
Be. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neglect. The same with the UTIs. I was told, my mom, older people just get UTIs. Full stop. End of story. That's it. We can't do anything about it. That's baloney. That's neglect.
Absolutely.
That's
They
neglect.
told me the
So,
same thing. They said the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I also want to say, because for people listening, what Aaron did is really important, is that he is curious, and he was curious, and he didn't take what everyone told him as the gospel. And when you have a gut feeling and you know your person better than anyone else, like you know your dad better than anyone else. I knew my mom better. And I said to them, I'm not, because I had my mom on full resuscitation, because, I didn't want to have do not resuscitate until I could look in her eyes and know she was ready to go.
Right.
I didn't want anyone else making that decision in the middle of the night when I wasn't there.
Right. Right.
And
I agree.
I wasn't being Pollyanna, and it wasn't like I'm trying to prolong my mom's life and keep her suffering. No, not at all. But I needed to know. I needed
Absolutely.
to see her, because I know my mom. She gave me the high sign. I know her.
Absolutely.
So as you knew your dad, and as you loved him more than anyone in that room could. So yeah. So what you did, I just want the audience to know that is so important when your intuition or your instinct is telling you otherwise. And it's very difficult to go up against this whole team of people that are telling you the opposite. It doesn't matter if it's one person or 20 people. If you have an inkling that you're right or there's something fishy or something wrong, stick with your instinct, right? Right, Aaron?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Follow your gut.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you're sitting there and they're the expert and they know and they've been through this and it's very difficult to say, well, no, I'm not listening to that. You know, that's difficult. It's
difficult.
hard.
Well, because you get gaslit and they tell you, I'm sure they've thought, oh, he's angry, you're just upset and you're losing your dad. And, this is, I heard that all day long. We know it's so hard. We know you're under stress. We understand. And BS, a lot of BS, you know. So, but it's hard because you're vulnerable.
You are. But
you're
the thing
tired.
was, excuse me, the thing was, it didn't make sense. And I'm a guy I'm realistic, but I'm rational. I like the information. Once I get the information, then I process it to say, okay, this doesn't make sense. You're telling me that, we have to do a DNR, or we have to pull the vent tube and do a trach. But I'm thinking, you just told me he's a vegetable. He doesn't feel pain. He's not responding to pain. So why do we have to do anything right now? If he's not responding to pain, it doesn't make sense that we have to do a DNR. Well, you don't want him to go through more pain if they do the CPR on him. But he's not responding to it. He doesn't feel the pain. So what are you talking about, Doc? I just look like this. I might have boo-boo written across my forehead sometime, but today is not that day. Hey, boo-boo. Today is not that day.
I wonder if I had that written on my back. I don't know. Maybe that's it. I thought it was my hair color.
But yeah, so it just didn't make sense, You're pressuring me to do something, but there's no logical reason to do it except that you're trying to work something out over here. It has nothing to do with the patient himself. So yeah, that was a big part in it, and that's where we're at today,
Right. So, wow. So first of all, thanks for ruining my mascara. And
I'm so sorry.
Mine too. Mine's a mess.
Yeah. I'm just so sorry about that you had to go through this. It is.
I'm so sorry.
And the thing about it is that this is not an outlier. This what happened to you happens on a regular basis. In all these facilities, you have people trying to cover up. They're basically they lied to you about why you couldn't bring your dad home, and it has to be changed. We can't have this. It's ridiculous, and so my heart goes out to you. It's just awful,
It's no wonder when you think about, people who are listening now too, sometimes people just give up because it is so hard to fight against that kind of pressure. There's a big pressure that they put on you, and they can make you feel, I don't know if this happened to you, but many people I talk to have expressed this, and there was I'm going to say that I contemplated it, but it never really affected me, where they try to make you feel guilty, like you're hurting them by not making this decision. You're hurting them.
You're causing the suffering. Yeah.
Right.
You're causing them to suffer, and when you're going, but wait, no, what they're doing is causing her to suffer. This doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a doctor, but I have Google, and I got fingers. And I looked up a lot of stuff. And by and large, everything that I predicted kept happening, they wouldn't take a Foley catheter out. I'm saying I did research. It's that's like poison to keep that in a person that doesn't need it. She's fine. She needs it. It's, her wound, Next thing you know, she's hemorrhaging in bed from a Foley catheter, needs blood transfusion, and has to be rushed to the hospital. It's nonstop because they won't listen to the family. And they have ulterior motives, which is at bottom line, follow the money always, and it's down to understaffing, So as we talk about in the documentary, but it's hard, and I get why people, especially when you have tons of other responsibilities. If you have a family, you have children, you have a job, you have all kinds of things, and you've never been put in this situation. Now you're dealing with a right. I didn't know what a FLMA, is that it? FLMA
FMLA, yeah.
Yeah, because, I'm independent contractor, so I've never had to get that permission. But, I imagine that most people don't know what that is. We don't know what we need to do. We don't know our rights.
Right.
And so we're scrambling. And some people don't have the fortitude. That doesn't make them worse. They just don't.
Right.
They just don't. And that's just the truth. And they shouldn't have to. It's not like I shouldn't take my car in. Let's go back to the car analogy and take it in. And I don't know one thing. I don't know anything about carburetors. And I shouldn't have to if I'm taking it to the professional and paying my money.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I agree.
Why do I have to go home and Google it and find out?
That's so interesting that they used the car thing with you too, Susie. I hadn't known that.
Yeah.
That must be the standard, one of the standard lines they use to gaslight people.
Right.
Right. Because because the doctor, when he first discharged her, which she had gone in with because of this wound that I didn't know about, they didn't tell me. That didn't happen there, Aaron.
Which, by the way, they need to tell you. They
have to tell you by law.
Inform you, and of course
so
they
when
don't.
She got to the hospital, when she got to the hospital, they said they didn't want the responsibility on them, so they said your mother's here, but she was also admitted with a stage 4 wound, so we wanted you to know that. So when I called the facility, they said, "Oh, it didn't happen here." So apparently, it happened on the way to the hospital.
Oh, transport.
I guess, right? Yeah. So and so when she was finally, and she also was trached for no reason. She didn't need it. It's just easier. It's easier. They gave her a G-tube to feed her through the belly. She didn't need that. It's easier. Right? All they have to do is turn the machines. They don't have to deal with them because it's time consuming, and when you're understaffed, that's how you do it.
Well, plus they get to charge for those procedures.
And they get to charge.
So it's more money.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when she was released, and I said, I wanted to know, is my mom dying? And the doctor was literally said to me, "Stop being so dramatic. No, your mom is, no," in a good way. He was saying it in a good way. He was saying no, your mom is she's a strong woman. She will get her back to her base where she was. But by the time I got back to the facility, that's when I started getting that analogy. It's like, well, everything's breaking down, and this is what happens. It's
and you
like
can't
a
prevent
car.
It,
It's like a car. So when things it starts, like one thing triggers another, and that's how it works. And I'm saying, but you're not taking care of her at all. So you're just writing her off. Like, take care of the wound. Take care of this, and yeah, no, they just wanted me to give up. They just said she's going to die from the wound. Yeah. So, and I understand a lot of people would go, my mom's dying, and from the wound, that's what they told me, and that's it. End of story. And that's a horrible way to die.
Some people don't have family at all.
Anybody.
They're just left.
That's true.
Left to the where there's nobody advocating for them.
And Aaron, can I just tell you, I was there. I gave up everything for 6 months. I'm not a helicopter mother daughter by any chance, stretch of the imagination. But when the poop hit the fan, I was like, okay, that's it. I have to go every day, because if I don't, God knows what's going to happen. And it wasn't a 3-hour drive, but it was definitely in LA, at least over an hour each way, because of traffic. I ended up moving into my ex-brother-in-law's house, so it was 2 miles away, because I couldn't go back and forth every day.
Right.
So, but even me being there every day didn't help.
No.
Just FYI. Isn't that horrible?
No. It is, because it's kind of like what Don said. You trust the doctors. You trust these people because they went to school for all these years. They know the medical terminology, and you expect the system to work the way they tell you it's going to work. When I go to the hospital because I have a cough, I actually went to prompt care a couple of days ago because my tonsils were swollen. And so the young lady said, well, we'll test you for strep. So she did that. And she said, well, right now we don't know, but I'm still going to treat you as if you had strep. And so I'm thinking, okay, as long as it's going to make my tonsils feel better, my throat won't be swollen, And so she gave me some sort of steroid. and she gave me some sort of bacteria, like amoxicillin. So I'm thinking, okay, I think it's going to work. I'm trusting her and what she's prescribing me to do what she says it's going to do. We put our family members in these care facilities, and we expect these care facilities to do what they're supposed to do, you know, and then they come out dead, you know, and I hate to be so blatantly blunt about it, but that's what happens, you know, and people think, oh, well, he said it was because the 1949 Pinto's carburetor, you know, goes bad after 60,000 miles. It's supposed to be that way, you know, and I don't know nothing about a 49 Pinto. I don't know if you guys do, but I'm 45, so I couldn't tell you about a 49 Pinto, you know. But if he tells me about something that I have no knowledge of, and he just throws it over my, you know, throws the cover over my head or the blanket over my head, then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe that is what happened. You know, his liver went bad, then his kidney went bad, then his heart went bad.
Maybe the doctor was too old.
But you want to hear answers. You want to hear either solutions or reasons. You want to hear. You don't want to hear they don't know. You don't want to hear you want to hear anything, even if it's something that's not positive, but you're hearing something. You want to see a path. And that's where we start just accepting, because you want to hear.
Right. Yeah, but also, Don, they also tell you things. You also don't want to just hear something either, because if you remember at the emergency hospital, they told me my mom was on life support, which she wasn't. She lived another 5 months after that, but they wanted her to. They were basically
right. Yeah.
Right.
And and when I found out that they were upping her fentanyl like every half hour, and I don't know why. And then
because she shouldn't have been on it in the first place.
Right. And so anyway, long story short, he said, yeah, I can stop it, but, you know, your mom, her organs have probably started to shut down by now. And once they shut down, there's no turning back. And I said, okay, well, there must be tests for that to see if they have begun to shut down. And he said, yeah, there are. So, you know, a couple hours later, he meets me at the hospital. Yeah, let's just guess on someone's life. So he shows up and he goes, you're not going to believe it. They're all at 100%. Boom, never saw that before.
I've never seen this before.
It's a miracle. It's a miracle. Your mom's amazing. It's a miracle. And I'm like, okay. But he told me her vitals, her organs were shutting down, period. So if I wasn't such a stubborn bee, I would have, you know, I would have accepted it and said, oh, okay, and let her go.
Did they ever do that that brain scan that they said they were going to do to see what kind of function? Did they ever actually do that? Because I know they said
they did. Okay. They did end up doing it. They did do it. I got the report, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it was like a week later, and they said it was low-level brain activity. So, of course, he was unresponsive to pain. He was unresponsive to touch. He was unresponsive to everything. But he was breathing like 25% over the vent tube. So he was breathing some on his own, but everything else just wasn't functioning. And I kind of knew, you know, when I saw him that first time, I leaned over and I talked to him, and I knew he knew I was there. There was no question about it. I got a bond with my dad like no other, and I know him, he knows me. And when I leaned over and I whispered in his ear, I saw him, you know, you could see him try to blink a little bit, try to do something to let me know he knew I was there. So I knew that. I knew that that at least that part of him was still there. But there was nothing else, you know, Rick. There was nothing else. And once they came back with the test saying it was low-level brain activity and, you know, he was still unresponsive to pain, it was just, we were just at a place where now it's like, okay, well, let me get him home, you know? Right. That's if he's going to be on hospice, I'll do better by having him at home than having to drive an hour and a half or 3 hours there, 3 hours back, you know, every day, hour and a half to work, hour and a half back up that way to get that way. And so, you know, that's where we ended up being with my dad in that situation.
Okay.
Could he have been drugged? Like, could they have had him on, you know, heavy-duty opiates that he wasn't responsive because of that?
Well, I snapped out about that. because early on, he was expressing a lot of pain. So they were feeding him these medications. And when I found out, I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, we have him on this and that and this and that. And I'm like, well, I could have swore I spoke to someone and told them, do not give him any hard medications. If the Tylenol 3 is the most I wanted him to have. I didn't want the fentanyl. I didn't want the morphine. I didn't want any of those, because not only are they addictive, but in his condition,
they suppress
him. Exactly. And that was just kind of common sense to me. I'm not, if I know you can't get up, walk around and hang out, your body's not going to process those drugs properly. They're just going to sit, and it's going to, like you said, suppress you more. And another friend of mine who, she was a CNA, and she told me, she said, when you have combative patients or, patients like that, they give them specific drugs that slowly kill them. But they give it in increments where you don't even know that it's doing that. And, when they decide to say what they did, how they did, they're justified because of the small doses over a period of time. And so that was another issue. But I told the doctor, I said, no more fentanyl, no more morphine, none whatsoever. And if you do decide you have to give him, call me and let's discuss why you need to do this. And then I'll make the decision as to yes or no. But they didn't. They just kept doing it. And then when I called and found out that they said, oh, but we're doing it in smaller doses. I said, but yeah, you were supposed to call me, But that's what they do.
Yeah, as one of our experts in the documentary says, he goes, it's slow motion euthanasia is what it is.
Yep.
And you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, and for an expert to say that means that this is not unusual. This is a usual thing. And I'll tell you, the reason what made me think of it is that when my mom was at that hospital with that doctor that said her organs were shutting down, when I found out she was on fentanyl, finally, like when they told me she was on life support and they took out the trach, and she looked like she was dying, because she looked like what I ever imagined, like mouth open, not responsive, like nothing. And then 3 days later, because she was supposed to die within a couple hours, 3 days later, she came out of whatever this was, and I told him that. And he
while
said,
she was still on the fentanyl. She was still on it.
But my mom was a force, like telling you my mom was a force. If she didn't want to go, she was not going. And I was like, Mom, because my nephew was there. He goes, Nanny is wide awake and smiling right now. Wake up, Susie. I went over and I'm like, Mama, you're a troublemaker. What is going on with you? What's going on here? She starts laughing. By the morning, she's watching TV, and I'm calling the doctor. I'm going, I want my mom out of this hospital. And I went to go take a shower. By the time I got back, I won't go through all the details. My mom was, again, looking like a zombie with the mouth open, not responsive, and that's when the nurse told me the doctor had come and told her to up the fentanyl every half hour.
After telling her he was taking her off of it. Yeah.
So these are things that we don't know because we don't know. That's why.
Right.
And unless you know your person so well, and you happen to be lucky enough to be there with them, like we stood vigil. Like I was there, like I was right next to my mom because they said she was dying. I'm not going to leave her alone.
Right.
So I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry for your experience. It's one that no one should have to go through.
Nobody, and especially our parents.
If you could just say, there's no magic solution to what you went through or what people are going through every day. But if there's any advice you could give to anybody, something that you would have done differently, something that you think you can actually do, is there anything that you could tell people that to avoid anything? And you may not, because it's such a difficult situation, but does anything come to mind?
There is. I had spoke with Rick, and we've had a couple in-depth detailed conversations, and initially I felt like it was my fault, and Rick kind of helped me through that thought process of understanding that it wasn't. because my dad, he had asked me multiple times. He said, "Get me out of here." He asked me, he would literally, tell me while he was still cognate and he was able to talk. He would say, "Aaron, get me out of here. Get me out of here." And I'm thinking, Dad, you just don't want to do what the people say. Just do your rehab, come home, And he begged me. He begged me to get him out of there, and I brushed it off, Don. I brushed it off, thinking that the hospital was going to take care of my dad. So if I could give out any tidbit of advice, it would be, when you have a loved one who is able to communicate with you and tell you what they're experiencing, don't take it lightly. First off, find out all of the information you can find out about what this situation is. Google, like Susie said, I use a thing called ChatGPT. I ask ChatGPT a million questions a day, but find out all of the information. And I'm not saying pull your people out of hospitals. I'm not saying that, because it's not all bad. Even though it seems like this may be standard operating procedure now, they're not all bad,
Right.
But be informed, get all of the information, and make yourself aware. Don't be afraid to, hug your family member and kind of look to see what you see, just to, do a visual to get an understanding of where you're at in the situation. Too many times we kind of just let them sit there, and we sit over in the other chair and we talk to them from a distance and not get over and, become part of the situation, or part of the solution, if I can say that better. So become active, become very active in whether it's a transition to come home or transition, to move on to whatever's next. Become active in your family members' lives, and communicate. Share your stories so others will go through it. Who are going through will know what's going on. Because at some point, like I said, I don't have any kids, so I may end up in one of these places. Just like my father, I might be in that situation. And if I don't have anyone to tell my story or to do anything to help me, so I don't experience what he did and what Susie's mom did and what so many others are experiencing on an everyday basis. So it's up to us to just be active.
Amen.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
That's all we can do. And
yes, for now.
Yeah, for now, until we can get the system to the way it should be working, which, that's a big,
right.
It's a big task, but people like you sharing your stories, that's the first step to that solution. So we can't thank you enough.
I want to first of all, thank you, Aaron, for sharing your story. I know just hearing it, I feel like, we become like a family, like I know your heart, I know who you are, I feel you, like you've made me cry already so many times today, because I'm there with you. Like I've walked in your shoes. Yeah. And I get it. And I know that so many people listening to your story will feel the same way. And so, we do have power, and that's why we're doing this documentary. And that's why we're talking to people like you, because if we are informed, when we know better, we do better.
Right.
And that's the whole point of the conversation and the documentary, is to inform so that we can do better, that we are armed with knowledge. And
Absolutely.
So everybody, please support No Country for Old People. It's so important, as you can see through Aaron's story. And it doesn't matter if you're man, woman, blonde, brown, whatever you are, whatever, it's going to affect you. It affects all of us. Aaron, how old are you? You're in your 40s?
I'm 45.
45. You're a young man in the middle of your life, and you had to deal with it. Not fair. Your dad was not an old elderly man. No. That wasn't supposed to happen to him. And
right, I agree.
It shouldn't have happened to him. So we all need to band together as a community, nationwide, a national community. And if you want to join us, we're doing a people over profit movement. Go to nocountryforoldpeople.com. You can sign up there. whatever your strengths are, if you want to organize, if you want to, if you can walk and make signs, whatever it is, you've done this before, help us out. We haven't. We need your help. And we're still raising money for the final parts of this documentary and also for the movement. You can go to the National Consumer Voice for quality long-term care, and we have there's a link there. You can make a tax-free donation and help us out that way. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, because love is powerful, right, Dawn?
Yes, it is. Love is powerful. Love is contagious, and love conquers alls. We do thank everybody for watching, listening. If you like what you hear and see, then please subscribe and share. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Rick Mountcastle.
Thank you,
for
Rick
joining
Mountcastle,
us.
as our special guest, and again, thank you, Aaron Adams,
And he's just special
for
in
sharing your
general.
heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Love you, Aaron.
Thank
I'm
you.
sending you love and a big hug. And
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.